Welcome to Actualize, a podcast focused on the intersection of performance, ambition, and mental health. I'm your host, Rob Pintwala. My goal for the show is to not only celebrate success, but also shed light on the challenges and sacrifices that come with ambition. Actualize is brought to you by First Session. Launched in 2019, I started First Session to help you find the right therapist. First Session is purposely designed more like a dating website than a clinical website, as we're completely focused on helping you find the right fit the first time. My team and I interview and vet our partner therapists, so you can simply browse videos, see who you vibe with, and instantly book a session. Check us out at firstsession.com and see why more than 7,000 Canadians have chosen First Session to find a therapist. This episode is with Braden Hanley. Braden is the co-founder of Inkbox, a temporary tattoo company he and his brother started in 2015. Inkbox was sold in 2022, and now Braden is looking towards the future. During our conversation, we talk about how Inkbox got started, and we discuss Braden's entrepreneurial drive and work ethic. We talk about hiring friends and what it's like to have to fire friends. We also discuss the concept of humility and developing and leaning into your superpowers. I hope you enjoy this episode with Braden Hanley. Hey, Braden, so good to connect with you today again. Thanks for having yourself on Actualize.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
That was awkward. All right, man. I want to just ask with you about how you're doing. It's been about 2 years since you sold your company, and wondering if you've had any time to reflect on the whirlwind that must have been Inkbox.
I think I'm mostly just reflecting right now, actually, because I'm winding down my time at Inkbox. I'm still there until the end of the year. So I haven't had much time to actually sit and think about it. Now I've been going through old photos and videos, just collecting things so I don't lose them. And I'm starting to reflect more on the journey and what a ride it was. It felt like a absolute blur. So it's interesting to look back on now and just, I don't even know what was going through my mind most of the time.
Well, it sounds like I caught you at the perfect time here, the beginning of the reflection. So I'm stoked for that. For those who aren't familiar with your story regarding Inkbox and that chapter of your life, maybe you can bring everyone up to speed of how, in whatever format, whatever speed you wish.
Sure. My brother and I started a company in 2015 called Inkbox, which were tattoos that last 1 to 2 weeks. We actually went down and visited the tribes in Panama that have been using the fruit for thousands of years to actually dye their skin. We took that fruit, helped support the tribes, and actually patented one ingredient in that fruit that actually does the switching of your skin color. From there, we grew it to about 30 million in sales a year, 100 million plus overall, 180 employees, and recently sold in 2022 to BIC, the lighter and pen company. That's the very quick.
Condensed.
I guess I can go on a bit more. We started with $10,000, so not much, and turned it into about 80 million Canadian.
Sounds like a good ROI. That's amazing, man. And yeah, just for context as well, why it might sound just kind of bro-y here. Braden and I grew up playing hockey together in the same hometown, St. Catharines, Ontario. So yeah, we know each other from way back. And yeah, it's amazing to speak to you today after this journey. Yeah. So I want to start from, near the beginning. When you started Inkbox, how far were you out of school, and were you working full time? And did this kind of entrepreneurial pursuit was it something you were chasing, or is it something that was more organic?
I started, I think it was 2 years after school. I had a full-time job, but I recently left it. I was basically a glorified receptionist. My actual title was a marketing manager, but it was more of a receptionist position. And I helped other companies with anything and everything that they needed, from PowerPoints to fixing their phones to helping them write, helping them build websites. Like I was a master of, sorry, not a master. I was a master of none, but good at a lot of different things. And I always wanted to be an entrepreneur from when I was a kid. I remember even in hockey, actually, I was like bringing tape and selling it to other people on the team, which is a crazy thing to think about. I actually just remembered that you said hockey. But yeah, my dad took me to garage sales, and we used to buy hockey equipment and take it to a local used equipment store and trade it in. I was buying stuff off AliExpress or some version of that when I was 14, 16, and reselling it to friends, actually fake Lacoste shirts when those are all the rage.
I had a few of those.
Yeah, I'm sure you remember that. I was selling things on eBay. I think I did 20K one year on eBay when I was 16.
Unreal.
Yeah, and then I went to school for entrepreneurship at TMU. So I've always wanted to do it. I didn't think that I wanted to be like, I always wanted to like own a store or something, not like a tiny little store, not like something big. I never really had that ambition, or never really thought I could do that even.
Yeah, I think I remember wanting to like do business stuff because I'd hear it a lot as a kid. My dad was an entrepreneur, but it wasn't until like I met someone running an online business and their office was just a computer that I was like, whoa, like what is this? Like, where's the filing cabinet? Where do you think you got the like urge to like turn $1 into two, or just like hustle? Like, did it come from your parents, or were there anyone in your family?
From my parents. So my mom always had me counting. She had a secretary job when I was young, and I helped her count the money. And I don't know if that was like encouraging to make money or just to learn how to count money, but that's one of my earliest memories, is counting money. And I really enjoyed it for some reason.
If it was the cent.
Yeah, the cent, the maple cent on the $100 Canadian. There was no $100 Canadian bills.
Goodness.
And my dad actually owned a pet shop with his brother when he was young. He was working at GM, but they also owned a pet store, and it completely failed. So I think he has a little bit of that entrepreneurial spirit as well. So I was around it, not successful entrepreneurs, but, around that mindset of consistency and trying to make a dollar.
And your dad ran it with his brother. That's interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting.
How did their relationship fare after that venture? Do they still get along?
I don't know if I can go into that, but maybe some family dynamics. Everyone has
focus on you.
Yeah, everyone
focus
has
on you and your brother.
Yeah, everyone has family dynamics that aren't the best. So let's skip that part for now.
Well, man, yeah, like I think it's such probably a joy, but also a risk to go into business with your brother. Like, how do you describe what that journey was like to go with Tyler?
It's a common question that we get.
And it's rare now. It's rare. I think it's more rare these days than it was.
Do you think? I don't know. Maybe, yeah.
At least in like the VC backed world.
I guess because you can also find people easier now, right? So I always looked at, that's someone that the best and trust, right? I would have a lot of fear going into a business with someone that I don't know well, because I don't know what their intentions are at the end of the day. And I think knowing my brother, I know that he has the best intentions for myself as well, no matter what. There would be no ill intention there ever. And that puts you at ease, I think. I've never done the opposite, so I don't have anything to compare it to, but I think it would make sense. We never really argued that much because we had very clear ownership of different departments and leaned on each other for those decisions and trusted those decisions no matter what. Even if you were wrong, it was disagree and commit.
And how thoughtful were you in entering into that sort of divide and conquer?
Not at the beginning. Yeah, not at the beginning. I think as you progress, it was, laying it out more and more. But in the beginning, no, it was just, hey, I'm going to do this. I guess you do this, and let's see if this works, right? There, not as much thought went into it as people would have believed, right? It was more of just, let's do it and see what happens.
Well, it sounds like that's one of the advantages of just having that love and trust already going in, right? It's like you don't need to spend a month figuring out a partnership agreement necessarily. Wow, so that's incredible. And were there any I think you mentioned if there was sort of a disagreement and then commit, was there any sort of like you hear of some partners talk about, I don't know, like conflict resolution structure that they use? Was it more simple than that with you two? How do you fight?
I
How did you disagree? Did you just talk it out?
I think you just talk it out, yeah, and disagree. And if you needed a third party, you'd go get a third party. You know, from we had a CFO early on, so I think, and she was a lot more experienced than us. So I think leaning on someone like that for certain decisions would be important too. But I think we were so aligned because we didn't know either. So if you don't have experience and you really don't have anything to base your decisions on, then you're just trusting each other from the get-go. It sounds insane now, but it makes sense if you have no experience.
Yeah. What I have always thought about you two, and I think you in particular, just like how much humility that you have. And I think that's incredible. And I wanted to, because I also think that's not super common in the, let's go out and start a company and raise money and fake it till you make it mentality, which is the most common mentality, at least in my perspective.
That was one of our
Have
faults,
you,
though. That was definitely one of our faults because
what was that?
not having enough confidence in ourselves, because raising money and getting people to buy in was a lot more difficult, because if you don't come across, this macho person, then people don't believe in you as much. And that was a tough lesson that we had to try to learn, especially in fundraising. But I just think that comes from our upbringing, modest upbringing. We don't come from a background of money. It's just hard work.
Just a quick introduction to chat about my company, First Session. Have you had a less than ideal experience looking for a therapist? There are lots of options out there, but it's hard to know where to get started and who to trust. My company, First Session, focuses entirely on creating the best experience finding a therapist. We vet and verify each therapist we work with, interview them on camera, and allow you to browse on your own time to see who you vibe with. You can see updated availability and book directly with them. No phone calls, no email back and forths. Run through videos and find the right therapist for you the first time at firstsession.com.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And was that lesson learned just through repetition and getting rejected, or was it learned through feedback, or how did you
Feedback.
did you have to create yourselves into these more macho people, or did you just build that confidence?
I think you have to fake it. I think I'm still working on it, the confidence part, and still faking it in some sense. Even trying to start something new now, I'm like, I don't even know if I know how to start a company, which people are like, yes, you do, but I don't know. Like it's changed a lot, right? Like the way I started it 8-9 years ago is completely different than how you'd start business now. Can I do it again? Maybe. There's a lot of luck involved too.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, I remember the story you told me about sort of mixing this compound like in your bedroom or something and trying to make those tattoos.
Those are the
And
best
that's
days.
like the origin story.
Yeah,
Like, maybe you could share that a little bit.
Yeah, I had a 500 square foot apartment that I shared with a roommate, and the fridge was full of this Genepin ink fruit thing that would leak in the fridge, and my roommate wouldn't be very impressed with that. And I used to stay up all night, and I had this little ping pong table that was like one of those small ones, and I used to use that to actually mix the ink on. And I used to stay up all night with this dollar store equipment, this bowl and this wooden spoon, and just mix for hours on hours. But I remember every time I would put the ink into this bottle, this little tiny bottle, I would think to myself, I just made $20. And that would keep me going. Like that was crazy to me, that I could work and make my own money and not have to pay anything to anybody. And I could just do that all night if I wanted to. Like I would work throughout the night just mixing ink, because I was making money. That was crazy to me.
That's wild. Maybe we can talk a little bit more about that kind of work ethic and how that translated into once you started to formalize as a company and hired people. And like, how did you find some sort of, maybe balance isn't the right word, but some sort of like equilibrium of how you show up with this, childlike business of yours that you obviously care so much about? How did you not burn out? What happened?
Yeah, I think from the beginning, I always made it a point to show up. That was the most important part. It wasn't about staying long. It was about showing up, but about being consistent. And I think that's what people mistake a lot of the times is you don't have to work those, 16, 18-hour days. You might have to in the beginning, some days, but not every day. You're going to kill yourself. I made it a point to have a pretty well-balanced life, but I would work 7 days a week sometimes, but maybe those were only 8-hour days, right? You do not need to work 18-hour days. If you do, then you're probably building the business wrong.
Yeah, I hear that. And how is your personal life in the early days? Were you in a relationship? Were you single? Were you able to keep your friends? Did they support you?
Yeah, I was in a relationship and who is now my wife, Andrea, and she was there from the beginning. So she was mixing ink with us. And, we started dating actually before I even started the business, like right before I had no job, no money. And I remember telling her one day she wanted to go out. And I actually was like, listen, I'm starting this business. I feel super embarrassed, but like, I need to be honest with you. I have no money to take you out. That's a tough thing to tell somebody. But she was like, I'll come mix ink with you, which is amazing. Like that's the partner you want. And we really built it together. That's the greatest story that you can have with somebody if you build something together. Same with my friends, right? I hired my friends at the start. So they were just coming out of school and I hired a bunch of them. And we built, not only did I build a company with my friend and my partner, my friends, my partner, my brother, built it with my family. Like everyone was there from the beginning. So how often do you get to do that? That's definitely once in a lifetime.
That's incredible. When I hear some entrepreneurs talk about being founders and growing with the company, and I've heard several people say this, but for example, like the Shopify folks like Harley Finkelstein and another CEO coach that I've interviewed, basically the lesson is your job as the founder, executive, you need to grow as fast or faster as the company as your skill set needs to grow that fast. How do you think about that? How did you think about that?
I mean, probably didn't that much. I think we just tried to surround ourselves with people that were smarter than us, right? And I think a lot of entrepreneurs or founders get it wrong when they surround themselves with people, but then don't what we call give away your Legos. When you're a kid and you're building something great with Lego, you'd give other people pieces so you can build it together. A lot of founders and entrepreneurs struggle with that, is giving things away. They'll hire smart people, but then they'll still be micromanaging or having a lot of oversight into their day-to-day. Whereas I think we were really good at hiring good people that we trusted and giving them a lot of ownership over their work. That's when people really provide the most value to the company, when they actually care. I remember working for companies that when I cared about it, when I liked the person that I was working for, I put in effort. And when they showed me that they trusted me, I went above and beyond.
Yeah, that's amazing. I can relate to that. And regarding like hiring your friends and maybe hiring your friends early on, I imagine there was so many pros to that, but some of the cons was that sort of maybe having those difficult conversations or bringing in someone for them to report to, or maybe even having to let some friends go.
Yeah.
What can you share about that?
Yeah. I mean, that's the hardest thing I've ever had to do is fire friends. People that were there from the beginning, I had to let them go. And those are, I remember leading up to that day and I was broken for weeks. And people could tell at the office too, I was broken and they knew something was up because just being around your friends all day is amazing. But when the company struggles and then you need to replace them, how do you do that in a way that you feel you can't? You just can't do it and feel okay. But that's also okay, right? Like you shouldn't feel okay about it. That means you care, but you know that it has to be done. You have to separate the business from the people sometimes, your personal and business. And I used to tell people this all the time. That worked for us. It's like you need to separate business and personal relationships. You have to at some point.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember startup I worked at, I think they leaned a little bit too far on being a family until things got hard. And then I think they started using the term like sports team, like professional sports team where, you get replaced if you're not able to.
Why not just use the word business? I don't understand that. Do you have to, like, why can't it just be a business? Like,
Yeah.
obviously people know businesses are about making money in the end. Like, why not treat it like a business? It's about making money. And that's what I would tell people, even if I let them go. Like, listen, this is not a personal decision. This is a business decision. We're not a family. We're not a sports team. We're a business.
Do you think the first time that the company started struggling was when you really learned that, or did you have that in your mind when you were hiring your buddies?
I had that in my mind already because of things that would happen on a day-to-day basis that, some certain people wouldn't like each other, for instance. And then I'd be like, that's okay. You don't have to like everybody. It's a business. This is not a family.
And so one of the departments that you ran was the people HR sort of department. Yeah.
Yeah. I ran it by myself until we were about 50 people, or maybe even more than that, which is a lot. I ran it like I was just trying to make the best decisions that I could. I didn't really have experience in it at all, but I think I did it all right. Obviously, there's a lot more you can do. And when we brought in an experienced professional in that position, then I learned, oh, okay, I was not doing it very well this entire time. But super proud of how we ran the business for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember you, I think, saying that for so maybe even the entire time you interviewed either you or your brother interviewed every single hire of all over time.
I think that was probably for the first 5 years. We interviewed everybody, maybe a bit less than that. But that was just to get even if it was 15-minute touch base, just to get a good sense of who the person was. We really tried to hire the person first and maybe the skill set second. And maybe that was to our fault, right? I believed in really trying to develop people. Everyone has some sort of skill, and we probably didn't fire people fast enough sometimes. We invested in people a little too long. But that's something I look back at now that I'm proud of. People deserve a chance. And the fire fast movement, maybe that's not great for your culture. You think of sports teams, even though I just said you shouldn't treat it like a sports team. Chemistry is real, right? If you can work with someone well, if you are on the line and you have good chemistry, that actually leads to a lot more success. So building that chemistry within the team is important. And we had very low turnover because people really liked working together and built relationships that are super strong today. People got married from meeting there. It's a pretty crazy culture.
That's amazing. I've heard, really good things just through, others that I know who've worked at Inkbox. Yeah, I'm curious around the, some of the culture points. Like when I think about hiring and giving people time and developing them, and when you're like early stage like that and you're, there's a really big push to hit these targets or get this profitability or these sales numbers, right? And you're managing this like chunk of money, and maybe we can talk about, getting that investment in a second here, but how much it sounds you took the freedom to make these choices around like leaning more into culture early, whereas like some people are kind of scrambling and just like hiring people to fill a role and not thinking much about it. Like when did this like notion of just culture, did it just stem from like initially hiring your friends? Like when did it kind of take the forefront, or was it always there?
I think it's important to understand the position that the company was in from the beginning. Is we weren't in a race. We owned IP. It was difficult for other companies to come in and copy us. We had a pretty significant moat around the company. We built, not only did we own our own IP, we created our own software and hardware to actually develop the product. So it was completely vertically integrated. You couldn't just go to another country and get this made. That wasn't possible. I think so. That's important to understand, is because we weren't in a race and it wasn't necessarily hit these targets. Obviously there's targets and obviously there's things you need to hit, but it wasn't a SaaS company that was competing with hundreds of different companies to go after this market and gain market share quick. A bit different than that. The culture was formed early from hiring. It's such a strange thing, but I don't think we put an emphasis on it necessarily. But the people we hired early on were this term is not to be used negatively, but like misfit in culture. And I think that aligns with tattoo culture too. Maybe not now, but in the past it has. But a lot of new grads that haven't landed on their feet anywhere, working at coffee shops, because we hired a lot of operational people too. A lot of people that were fulfillment from the beginning. That was a significant part of our staff. And we made a conscious effort to bring people through the company. So every role that would open up within the company, that was a learned skill. So customer service, for instance, people from fulfillment, we would open that up to them and bring them through the ranks. This created a culture that understood different departments and wasn't so, we're better than another department. Everyone worked fulfillment. Even on Black Fridays for the first couple of years, the entire company had to work fulfillment. It doesn't matter your rank. I would work fulfillment for a couple of days. It doesn't matter. You would go pack orders. That would give you a pretty good sense of what people were doing all day. And, when you're like, get these orders out quicker, you would be like, you would have a better understanding of what it takes.
That's incredible. That's so incredible. I'm curious if you, maybe your brother, like, how did you seek wisdom? You said you hired people more experienced, and I think you said you're surrounding yourself with people who are smarter. But how did you utilize, it's whether that's like advisors, investors, coaches, and that sort?
Yeah, we had some investors and advisors, but personally, I didn't lean on many people. That's the honest answer. I didn't really have a single person that I leaned on, or even a Rolodex of people. It's such a strange thing, but I kind of leaned on the internet, which is like,
yeah,
I like found answers on the internet and read a lot of books, business books, read a lot of Reddit about, what people's thought processes are on certain situations. And that's really how I developed my experience. And then just by just throwing myself in every situation, if I ran HR, I ran customer service, I ran marketing, ran business development. I just got experience from doing and running those departments and being super involved. I think if you talk to anybody about my brother and I, we were very involved. We would do the nitty gritty work all the time. We weren't just, high level strategy or something. We would be, like I said, on the ground answering emails if we needed to. I'd jump in the queue. Sure. Why not?
Yeah. I wanted to ask a bit more about building confidence in these areas, or just competence, whatever you want to use. It sounds like you're like, I guess my question here is like, did you take some time to pat yourself on the back throughout the journey, or even
Definitely
after
not.
the sale? Is that something that's hard for you?
Definitely not. I never once remembered stopping and going, oh, good job. Now I have. I think that's what motivates me too. A lot of the time is being proud of my past self. Sounds strange too, but it's like sometimes I make decisions thinking, what would my future self think of that decision? Which has worked for me.
And is there have you had to learn to be a little bit easy on yourself in the last 7, 8 years, or is it part of your learning process? Like, are you hard on yourself?
I think I'm, pretty hard. I'm hard on myself when it comes to work ethic. Like I really struggle now even to take a day off, even though I'm technically not working. Like I can't not do anything all day. It's very difficult for me because I think I have this fear that I'm going to get into this bad rhythm or bad work. Like it's going to change my work ethic in general. Like even if I take one day where I just don't do anything, I don't know if it's probably not right.
That's deep, man.
Fear. Yeah.
I can relate to that a bit. Are you hoping to change that feeling? Do you want to take a day off at some time, or are you just not even there yet? And I don't mean a day off. I mean, how amazing would it be to take a month off and just, reset your system and not have FOMO or whatever?
I don't know. I think maybe when I'm a lot older, I think I have too much to give still, whether that be to other entrepreneurs and helping them, giving back to the community, or when I'm a parent, like I'm not taking days off. I want my kid to be their best selves, so I want to teach them every day, and that's what I mean. It's like I would never take a day off because I'd be like, I want my kid to be the best possible person they could be.
I love that. When you say you have too much to give, have you thought about recently or leading up to the last 2 years, let's say, have you thought about where your true interests are, or where you want to direct some of that energy now that you perhaps maybe feel like you have a bit more of that freedom to choose, or maybe you don't?
Yeah, it's giving, learning, and teaching. That's the 3 pillars of it. I want to give, and that's giving your time or giving your resources in general. I want to continue to learn. Every day I want to, and that's not taking a day off, right? It's like even learning, like I just painted my basement, for instance. Learn how to paint. I don't really know how to paint. I never really painted like a big project. And this is like, watch YouTube videos, learn how to paint well, which is harder than I thought it would be. And then teach. And that is teaching other entrepreneurs that are just starting out, or I would love to be a professor and teach one class or something. Working on that.
Cool.
I'm working on a class. I want to develop a class program that is taught to entrepreneurs.
Are you more aware of your strengths now that you've done this for so long? Have you had people help you understand kind of your superpowers?
I had a coach for a couple of years that really helped dig into that, because I always thought I wasn't good at anything. Like I wasn't great. I wasn't great at anything. I was always like decent at anything. Even hockey, I wasn't great. It was okay. Everything. I was just good. And what we dug into was my upbringing. When I was in elementary, I was severely bullied to the point where, I tried to commit suicide. I had 0 friends for, 4-ish years. I was in a pretty dark place. But what that allowed me to do was compartmentalize things. And that's a superpower. That's a really, and develop a lot of sensitivity. And that trait is rare in men. A sensitive person that can decompartmentalize things is a real skill. That's an entrepreneur. You can relate to people. You can be a really good leader. And then you can also bury things. And people say don't do that, but in moments, that is a very valuable skill. You need to do that. When you have to fire your friends, you bury that and you deal with it later because you don't have time right now.
Yeah. I think that some therapists would maybe say emotional regulation. Maybe you're just good at regulating, or
okay, maybe that's a better
burying,
term.
right?
Yeah. I don't know the therapy world that well, I guess, either for terminology, but I would just say bury it.
It's interesting because it sounds like your coach, and you did some work on not necessarily like digging, maybe you dug really deep into your past, but it sounds like at the very least, you kind of built some understanding around some of these traits or, what are now maybe superpowers, and then just focused on like leaning into them.
Yeah.
Do you spend a lot of your time trying to like hone your the top skills, like as you just referenced, or are you trying to still like get better at the things that you're maybe more weak at?
I think those skills are so ingrained into who I am that they don't need honing. That's just who I am, right? I don't need to work on them. I think I just need to keep them. And that's probably work in itself, right? It's like keeping that humility, for instance. It's like you can't lose that because that's a superpower too. So I tried to lean into other skills like teaching, for instance, helping other entrepreneurs. Like I don't know how to do that yet, but I'm learning.
And how do you choose who you work with or what you work on, or how will you choose?
Yeah, I only will help people that I know I can help. If I see a business in a space that I have no idea how to help, I'm not going to get involved because I just can't help you. I want to look at a business and be like, yeah, I can really help with this. Like, get me involved. I want to be excited about it. And I want the people to lean on me for decisions, and not necessarily for the right or wrong answers or to take them as gospel, but to lean on me and understand that I have that experience that they can really lean on as well and avoid the wrong decisions.
And is there any like value criteria in terms of personal values of the people that you're helping or working with? Are you looking for things that align with your values?
I think right now I've been looking for people that have the same work ethic and the skill set that they don't have to like raise a ton of money and hire out a bunch of things. They can just figure it out. That grit. That's what I look for, is people with that grit that they're not going to just give up because it's hard. They're going to go, if they have to make a crazy electrical thing, they'll go and learn electrical work and do it, which the entrepreneurs I'm helping with now are doing that, right? They don't have any skill set in that, but they'll go and figure it out. And that's what I really love.
And have you had to work on personal marketing, like marketing your own personal brand, or is that just all coming through connections and organically? Like
that's just coming through connections. Personal branding is that's a one I need to work on more.
Outsource.
Yeah, outsource it. I guess
it's hard to be humble and promote yourself.
It is really difficult. Like I feel weird about. I made a TikTok and I put a couple TikToks up and it felt weird. Still feels And do I want to? I think we've been very private about things for the most part, and making yourself public, like very public about what you're doing and your story is terrifying. Like you open up yourself to a lot.
It's great seeing you. Few times you've posted anything or, showing some sort of celebration, it's great. I mean, you barely ever do that. I mean, you know what I mean? And I just think it's incredible that, you're here now, and it's just like, I think you deserve a lot of praise.
Isn't it way cooler to be like kind of hidden and do it on your own? I don't know.
I agree with that.
There's something more honorable about it to me. And I don't want to make people feel bad about the positions they're in because my position is a lot different. My upbringing was pretty good for the most part. I was born in Canada. I was born a white male. That's a lot different position than other people. And I don't want to be, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a tough one.
I think you can elevate others though. I mean, I think you're already doing that. I think you did that, I think you'll continue to do that.
Definitely a balance.
I also think it's like, as long as it doesn't turn into some sort of guilt. And I think the guilt, because you worked your ass off, right? So it's, sure there was luck in there, but I think the guilt can hold you back in terms of my own personal experience.
That makes sense.
But yeah, I just wanted to come back on the no days off thing because first of all, I love the theme, but you did the business for 7 years or something like that, right? Give or take. How do you, even if you're kind of showing up every day, how do you rest? Can you rest and work in the same day? And how do you like rest effectively? How do you recharge effectively?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because I don't even think I thought about that. Yeah. Again, going back to it was such a blur that I don't think I thought about rest so much as I understood balance. I don't know if that makes sense, but I would go home and not think about the business and spend time with my partner and play video games and play hockey and work out. I would still do the things that I wanted to do.
But that recharge you.
I think so, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I never burnt out. So
Awesome.
I guess it worked.
It sounds like really community based. And would you set boundaries about speaking about work with them? Would they just let you say everything, or would they say not right now, or trying to fall asleep right now, or something like that?
No, I think there wasn't. I think it was just like if I needed to speak, we would talk about it. Right. And I think especially in the really difficult moments, I would lean on her because who else could you, right? I can't lean on my brother as much because he's so involved in it too that it's going to stress him out more. My parents probably wouldn't understand as much as I would hope. And then friends were involved in the business, and there's some very personal things that you probably can't talk about your friends with too.
I wanted to start to close things out, but you've managed your business through COVID, and maybe more people were putting tattoos on during that time, but you still had to run a company and you still had to fulfill all your orders, and you were in Toronto, which was one of the worst lockdown places maybe in North America, right? I was there. And how did you think about employee wellness and mental health during those times? And did it kind of slap you in the face, or did you how did you think about it?
It was a wild time, especially in Toronto. I remember you couldn't even go to the park with your dog, which is insane to think about now. Yeah, we never shut down, which is strange. We were considered an essential business because of supply chain, and manufacturing was always essential. And I think, from the very beginning, we shut down for 2 weeks at the beginning, fulfillment and everything. But we always leaned on our employees for how they felt too. We gave them stipends to take an Uber instead of the streetcar. We obviously implemented mask regulations and vaccine regulations, and tried to make people feel as comfortable as possible with all the unknowns that were going on. We made face shields, we manufactured face shields for a bit. We got hand sanitizer made and supplied it to all of our employees. Little things, but I think those little things add up. We upped our sick day policy, and obviously if people were sick with COVID, it was a bit different. You were still paid, which some companies didn't do, I guess, which is crazy too. They didn't do that, but just, as much as it sucked that some people had to work and some people could stay home and work, like some people had to go to the office and work still, and some people stayed home. You tried to implement things that created more of an equality there. Even though it wasn't probably enough. You probably could have done more, but tough decisions to make there. That's, probably made a lot of wrong decisions still.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing that you got through it, and now it's a story.
Yeah.
As we're wrapping up here, what's like one thing that's exciting for you right now, as far as where to put your time and effort into besides painting your basement, teaching a class?
Starting a new company, but starting it in a way that is more relaxed. You don't need to hire a bunch of people. You can just slowly build something in a category that is already established, that's easier to penetrate. You don't have to teach consumers how to use it. Just, I'm excited to be creative on my own terms.
Love that. Love that. Incredible. If you were to teach a class, would it be at your alma mater or?
I don't know. Maybe you have to have your PhD apparently to teach at TMU, which I don't have. So maybe at a college or something. It's not like it's not a big deal where it is. I think it's more about just the subject matter of it.
Awesome. If people do want to keep tabs on whether your teaching becomes more public, where might they follow you if there's any public? I know you're low key, but if there's any,
I guess LinkedIn, probably Instagram, LinkedIn. They're still public facing, so you can follow there. I don't post much, but when I do, at least it's interesting. Maybe.
Incredible. Well, thank you so much for this chat. It was really, really meaningful. And anything else you want to share before we wrap up?
Nope. That's it. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Great. All right, man. Until next time.
Yeah. Take care.
Thanks, Braden. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Actualize podcast. You can find the show notes for this episode, as well as all other episodes, at firstsession.com/podcast. If you like this podcast, please leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you again, and we'll see you next time.